Red wave after all. GOP winning popular vote by wide margin despite incongruous results. I think the GOP really did have a really good night on election night. I think they actually did a lot better than what the mainstream media has been coming out and saying. Even some of the conservative media has been downplaying their wins. But millions more Americans voted for Republicans than Democrats in House races. So why did the GOP win more seats? But before we get started, go ahead and hit that like button, share this out so we can get this information out there. Subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, and hit that alarm bell so you know when I'm putting out new stuff. Now, when you hit that alarm bell, you can change it from personal to all. That way, you get all my notifications from when I'm putting out stuff. Also, check out my link tree in the description. It has a link to my Patreon where I talk about things I can't talk about here. And there's also a link to my Instagram where I put out even more news. All right, let's talk about this news. The country may have experienced a red wave after all. It just didn't translate into the electoral outcomes that have historically accompanied major political shifts. And after the initial wave of instant narratives intemporized by pundits on election night, close observers are now just beginning to dig for the reasons underlying the model shattering disconnect. Republicans are currently winning the national popular vote for the House in Tuesday's midterm elections by a large margin, according to the latest data from the Cook Political Report. Specifically, GOP candidates have so far received 50,672,592 votes, or 52.3% of the total ballots cast as of this report. Democrat candidates, by comparison, have so far received 44,802,597 votes, or 46.2% of the total. These figures come from Cook's 2022 National House Vote Tracker, which is being updated as states continue counting ballots. This support for the GOP appears to fit with what pre-election polling data has suggested heading into election day, which a lot of people, again, has been trying to downplay. Several Republican candidates nationwide, including those running for the Senate and governor's mansions, have been rising in the polls in the last couple of months, indicating positive momentum for Republicans. Polling also found that economy, particularly inflation and crime, were the top two issues for voters, and that voters trusted Republicans more than Democrats to handle each issue. President Biden's approval rating was also on average in the low 40s heading into election day, while other polling showed about 70 to 80% of Americans thought the country was on the wrong track. Both strong indicators historically that the party in control of the White House will lose a significant number of seats in the midterms. However, Republican hopes for a landslide red wave victory faded Tuesday night as Democrats performed better in House races than expected in one key Senate and gubernatorial seats considered vulnerable. As the vote count currently stands, neither party has secured a majority in the House or Senate, with more ballots to be tallied and more states to be decided. Republicans are leading and still likely to win control of the House by a much smaller margin than expected. As for the Senate, it's anyone's guess, but any majority will be razor thin. It's unclear at this point what explains the glaring incongruity between the GOP's underwhelming performance in terms of winning seats on one hand and its significant lead in the popular vote on the other. Quote, the craziest thing, Republicans are winning the House popular vote by 6.4% so far, but just scraping by in the race for control, tweeted Dave Wasserman of Cook Political Report. He noted the GOP margin will narrow when votes come in from deep blue Oregon, Washington, and California, as well as from cities that take longer to count ballots. Still, Republicans are projected to win the popular vote. While waiting for the full results and accompanying data, some experts have been opining about why GOP appears poised to win the popular vote despite underperforming against expectations. Quote, Republicans did relatively well with black and especially Hispanic voters, but it didn't translate to seats, tweeted Sean Trendy, a senior election analyst for Real Clear Politics. Quote, an easy story is uncontested seats. there were about 8 or more GOP uncontested that Democrats, GOP uncontested than Democrats, but in some of those, they don't count any votes. So in the net, hurts the GOP. And there are some seats where 2 Democrats ran against each other. So the D's double dip. Democrats have been increasingly calling since 2016 to replace the current election system with the popular vote, particularly in presidential races that are determined by the Electoral College as mandated by the U.S. Constitution. I don't think they should get rid of the Electoral College. Again, like I always say, that gives small states a say in who's president, so I don't think they should get rid of that. The founding fathers had that there for a reason, and so they wouldn't have to ignore the small states, the so-called flyover states. But in past midterm elections that saw landslide victories, the party that won the most seats also won the popular vote by a significant margin. In 1994, for example, Republicans famously retook control of the House in a red wave election by gaining 52 seats in the House and 8 in the Senate. As for the House popular vote, Republicans received 36,325,809 votes, or 51.5% of the total ballots cast. Democrats received 31,542,823 votes, or 44.7% of the total ballot. In 2010, another red wave, Republicans gained 63 seats in the House and the 6 in the Senate. As for the House popular vote, Republicans received 44,593,666 votes, or 51.4% of the vote of the total ballots cast. Democrats received 38,854,459 votes, or 44.8% of the total ballots. Turning to the 2 most recent midterm races in 2014, Republicans gained 13 seats in the House and 9 in the Senate. As for the Republican vote, Republicans received 39,926,526 votes, or 50.6% of the total ballots cast, while Democrats received 35,608,840 votes, or 44.9% of the total ballots. And in 2018, somewhat of a blue wave election, Democrats gained 40 seats in the House, while Republicans gained 2 in the Senate. All data on past elections came from official vote counts collected and published by the House clerk. So this is all what's current and what's happening right now. Even though they try to downplay it, even some conservative sites are downplaying it. The Republicans had significant wins, and it looks like they're going to take control over the House. And I think they have a deep possibility of taking over the Senate. But let me know what you think. Leave your comments down below. Like, share, and subscribe, and check out democrepublics.com for the latest in news. Until next time, peace.